Recently did a video on why narcissists isolate you, and I'm going to put that link up here for you guys if you haven't seen that yet. In that video, one of the things I mentioned was learned helplessness, and I promised you an upcoming video on that topic. So that's what I'm going to cover here today. What is learned helplessness? What this looks like, what happens if you get stuck in this state in your life, not just in a relationship that's toxic, but even afterward, that can stay with you long term, especially if you grew up in a family like that or you were in a really long relationship like that. And be sure to stick around to the end, and I'm going to give you some tips on what you can do about it now. Learned helplessness is a coping mechanism that humans and animals develop as a result of repeated exposure to inescapable aversive stimuli. Learned helplessness is like the programming for powerlessness and paralysis. You're trained to believe that you have no control and to give up. So at the core of learned helplessness is a sense of loss of control. That sense of loss of control can lead a person to feel depression, anxiety, and other mental illnesses. By the way, if you are looking for a licensed therapist, I've partnered with BetterHelp, an online portal providing online therapy to you from the comforts and privacy of your home. You can get matched with a therapist within 24 hours. You can video chat, you can type chat, you can talk on the internet phone with your therapist. Whatever works for you. You can even send your therapist messages in between sessions. So if you want to get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp, check the link that I'm going to put up here. Also, you can find that link in the video description below. Now, in life, of course, we can't control everything. There are some things that are under our control, and there are some things that are not. And actually, we need both a sense of control in life and a sense of uncertainty. Because if everything was controllable and everything was predictable and we knew exactly what was going to happen over and over again, we wouldn't have any desire for curiosity to explore life, to do something different. That could even lead someone to feel very depressed, to think about things always being the same. That's why we also need an element of uncertainty in life. The problem with learned helplessness is it becomes a negative feedback loop. When you feel powerless and helpless, your instinct is to do things or put yourself in situations where you feel even more powerless and helpless. So it's like a cycle that just keeps repeating over and over again. That sense of powerlessness and helplessness is going to make you feel out of control. Learned helplessness is one of the reasons why people can get stuck in the victim stage of recovery. They can start to identify so much with their trauma and with being a victim that they stay locked into that. Trauma can become an excuse in life for not trying, for not doing anything, for opting out. It can even become so ingrained in your character that everything you do and in your entire perspective of life is based on you being a victim. So don't get stuck in the excuses and the entitlement of the victim, which is that entitlement of someone needs to rescue you, someone owes you, someone's going to do something for you. This is entirely on you to take care of your journey of recovery. And this is the difference between bitter and better. Because when you stay stuck in those places in your life and you don't do the work to get out of there, you're going to become bitter, right? Versus if you do the work, you're going to become better. Learned helplessness feels like you can't get out of a certain situation in which you feel powerless or helpless, or it feels like you can't change your life because you're powerless or helpless. So in that previous video that I mentioned about isolation, when I talked about learned helplessness, I mentioned the example of the circus elephant. So when that elephant is a baby, they start tying his foot or her foot to a chair, to a small tree, something like that. And the elephant learns that it can't get away. So even when it grows into this massive, powerful, strong animal, it still has that training in its brain telling him or her that it can't get away. So I want to give you some examples of what this might look like in your human life. You might notice that you're resigned to life, like you've given up on life in some way, yet you have so much more life to live. You might find that you've become this very obedient, subservient person when deep down, you know you were born for leadership. You might notice how you're dimming your light to feel safe, yet you are brilliant. You might feel enslaved and beaten down in your life, yet you are so strong and capable. Or simply, you feel like you can never win or it never works out for you, so you don't even try. So maybe what you're already noticing is how interconnected the learned helplessness is with your self-esteem. Your self-esteem is about the effect that you have on the world around you. So if that effect you're perceiving as something positive, then you have high self-esteem. If you feel that it's negative, meaning you can't make things work, things just aren't coming together for you, you can never win, it never works out, that's when you have low self-esteem because you don't feel like you're having a positive effect on the world around you, that the world isn't responding to you in a positive way. That forms your self-perception, the way you see yourself based on the feedback that you're getting from the world. So if the world is reinforcing, if your situations are reinforcing that you can't win, that you're not good enough, that it never works out for you, you stay stuck in that negative feedback loop. And what happens when your self-esteem drops is you develop self-sabotage and self-destructive patterns. Learned helplessness has been studied by the intel community, for example. The CIA found that by doing coercive control through interrogation tactics, they were able to create what they called debility dependence dread, which they also referred to as apathy, which is essentially the result that comes about through learned helplessness. Now, they mentioned that word dread, which is something that I also mentioned in a fairly recent video. I'll put that link up here for you too. You might be having dread attacks after the situations that you've been through in your life. So if that's the case, check out this video on dread. And something else you'll notice about learned helplessness is it can be both specific to a certain situation in your life, or it can be very generalized about life in general. So what's the difference? The very specific kind of learned helplessness is like, this situation will never work. I suck at math. The generalized version sounds like, I can't do anything right. Nothing ever works out for me. So you see, those examples can apply to your entire life, from relationships, family, friendships, work, fun things, whatever you're trying to do, that can become more generalized. And what you'll find is if you were raised in a family like this, you tend to have the generalized type because it was drilled into you since childhood, this form of learned helplessness. So now what? What can you do about the learned helplessness? The most important thing you can understand is that the only way out is to rescue yourself. No one is coming to rescue you. You need to rescue yourself. Now, of course, you can get professional help, and that's really recommended. Any kind of professional that you want to get on board, some kind of modality they practice, even if it's not traditional talk therapy, maybe it's some kind of energetic therapy, something else that you're really attracted to, something that you know has helped you in the past, or you just feel like you really want to try that for your recovery. Remember, professionals can help you, but they can't do the hard work for you. That is on you, and that's your responsibility. So I want to give you 5 tips now to ending the learned helplessness. Number 1, start with this inventory and ask yourself, where in your life do you feel helpless or powerless? And take an inventory of those areas. Maybe you notice for you, it's just specific to the area of relationships. Maybe you do great in your career. You've never had these issues in your career, in your family, in your friendships, in other areas of your life. It's just the intimate relationships. Or maybe you're realizing this is kind of across the board in your life and you've noticed these patterns in many areas in your life. So list those areas. Even if you realize it's generalized, list those areas so that you're already starting to connect with this idea of learned helplessness in those areas of your life. Number 2, ask yourself how the feelings of helplessness and powerlessness are affecting your life. So now first you've noticed where in your area the learned helplessness and powerlessness comes up. Now you're going to ask yourself how that's affecting the rest of your life. Does it stop you from going after your career goals? Does it stop you from going after your relationship goals? Is it holding you back from your health goals? So in what ways is this affecting the rest of your life? Number 3, stalk your inner dialogue. That means you're taking an inventory, you're paying attention to your self-talk. And what you're going to notice in your self-talk is that belief system. And maybe there's many of them. But these are the limiting belief systems that were programmed into your mind and nervous system throughout those situations of toxic relationships or toxic family or all of the above. Where you're going to notice this coming up is in the inner dialogue. And that's why I talk about reprogramming your mind, unsubscribing from the narcissist reality, owning your reality. This is part of that. So this is part of going through your mind and noticing on the daily how those limiting beliefs show up. If you want some help with that process, you want some guidance through it, check out a new course on my website called Liberate Yourself from Limiting Beliefs. And I will walk you through many common beliefs that you might have about different specific areas of your life. So you can start to identify what I'm talking about. You can start to identify the very common limiting beliefs, and then that helps you identify more. So it really gives you an excellent place to start with. You also get the Q&A with that, because I did that as a live course for other people last year. You'll get the Q&A where they asked questions as we were going through this coursework. And if you notice that you have the self-sabotage kick in, like you got the low self-esteem, now the self-sabotage, the self-destructive habits are coming up as a result of feeling powerless and helpless, check out the new course that I have called Ending Self-Sabotage. It's going to help you identify the very specific defense mechanisms that you're using to sabotage your own life. It's so helpful. People loved that course. They said it helped change their life by being able to identify those unhealthy, those dysfunctional defense mechanisms and put into place more healthy, more mature coping mechanisms. Number 4, get a perspective shift. So this means getting your mind and your perception into some kind of growth mindset versus the scarcity or the pessimism mindset that was programmed into your mind through the learned helplessness. And part of that is learning to celebrate all the little successes and victories along the way. So if you want to do this, give yourself a challenge. Tell yourself that you're going to go hike that mountain you always wanted to hike. So start training and then go do it. Maybe you decide you want to learn a language that you've always been fascinated by. You've always wanted to travel to some place. So you're actually going to put yourself to work in learning that language. Now, I've also read that exercise in general is a great prevention for learned helplessness. So doing physical challenges, doing physical feats within the limitations of your own physiology, your health, etc., and obviously consult your doctor before taking on something like that. But if you can give yourself some kind of physical challenge, for you, that might just be riding your bike for a mile. Like that might be enough of a challenge for you where you're at in your life, that you do that and all of a sudden you have this rebirth of self-esteem because you did something and you had a positive result. When you do something challenging like that, it really forces you to grow. It almost automatically shifts your perspective. And number 5, lead with courage. Courage means you feel the fear, but you take action anyways. I want to show you an example of courage in action. I just wanted to show you guys this really quick. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably saw these photos last week. When I go out of town, Venus goes to this dog camp. And I want to show you these photos because this is literally the exact opposite of learned helplessness. Venus's superpower is her courage. She has so much courage, it's contagious. And she's truly the definition of all in. She has taught me so much about going for it in life, whatever it is. And here's the example. She's got this stick. She found this stick that's really big, probably weighs almost as much as her. But she has never met a stick that she couldn't jump hurdles with. So here she is struggling with it, but bound and determined, even with slobber all over her face, to jump that hurdle, which is just incredible. And here she is on the recovery. And this big goofy smile just tells you everything. And so what happens, when you take on a challenge like that is you build confidence. She has so much confidence because she just will take on almost anything. She has that much courage. And so I hope this is inspiring for you. If you find yourself in learned helplessness right now and you just don't know how to get out, you feel powerless, you feel paralyzed, think about Venus and that stick and just going for it anyway. So as you put these 5 tips into place, you're going to be rebuilding your self-esteem in the process. Those 2 courses that I mentioned are going to help you a lot in that process. If you're just getting started, you're not really sure, you just want to get more information, pick up my free ebook on the 4 pillars of recovery. I'm going to put that link up here for you. You just opt in on that page. You'll get immediate access to download the PDF ebook on the 4 pillars of recovery. These are the key areas that sustain you through the ups and the downs that are inevitable in the recovery process after narcissistic abuse. Those 5 tips are also going to help you remember who you are. Overcoming this learned helplessness is not easy. It's challenging, it's uncomfortable, it can even be painful emotionally and physically at times, but it's something that we have to do if we want to get out of those feelings of powerlessness and helplessness. And while this is very common coming out of toxic relationships, toxic family, toxic friends, toxic work environments, this is something that's also happening on a societal level. The powers that be want to keep society, the people, locked into states of learned helplessness because they're a lot easier to control in that way. So the more aware you are of this, the more you're working through this in your personal life, the better off you're going to be in the world today, because this is reality and it's happening in all kinds of areas of society. They want you to think that you can't make a difference in your life, that you can't make a difference in someone else's life. They want you to think that you can't change things. But that's just a state of learned helplessness. So I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, give it a like or let me know in the comments below. If there's something you want to add to this conversation, I would love to also see that in the comments. I'm sending you a big hug.